And welcome into the New England Hockey Journal's RinkWise Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Marinofsky. No Patrick Donnelly today, unfortunately. He is, I think, on the final day of his Ireland vacation, which I am supremely jealous about. But joining us today is the new head boys hockey coach at Williston Northampton. That would be Brandon Borges. Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course. And how is it in the new job? This is where you went to school. How is it?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's definitely something that for the last 2 years I've been preparing for. Coach Derek Cunha has done an incredible job of getting me ready for this opportunity. We're just right now just trying to figure out, summer stuff with our guys, trying to make sure that, they're doing the work that they need to be doing. So when we get back in the fall, we're ready to rock and roll.
I always find summer is one of the tougher areas of hockey to dive into because it's sort of a blank canvas, right? In the fall, it's fall hockey. In the winter, it's your high school, your prep school, your junior team, wherever you're playing. Spring is sort of the toned down time. Summer is weird, I find, because it's like, how much should you be working out? How much should you be on the ice? Should I be at this camp? Should I be at that camp? How do you approach that, especially as the new head coach at Williston?
Yeah, I think with our guys, it's pretty simple. At the end of the year, we sit down with each individual guy, and we just go over a development plan. We go over some of the things that each individual needs to work on. Some guys may need a little bit more power skating. Some guys may need a little bit more time in the weight room, and just making sure that we're giving our guys an opportunity to work on the specific things that they need to work on. At the end of the year, those conversations are had and our guys go out and do those things. So it's been great.
How do you make sure not to overdo it?
I think with our guys, it's listening to your body, right? It's trying to figure out kind of where you're at. We want to make sure that, for us, it's a marathon, not a sprint. For us, it's, our season does not start September 1st. Our season starts, around November. So making sure that our guys, when they come back to campus in the fall, our guys, when they come back to campus in the fall, they're working out with our trainer as well. So they're getting, off ice work, they're doing those things and just making sure that, with our system and the way that we do things off the ice, at the end of each year, we do testing with our players. We do testing at the beginning of the year. We do testing at the end of the year. And then based on those numbers, right, our guys, we want to see improvement, right? Everyone's different, but we want them to be the strongest version of themselves. So we're always kind of pushing those numbers, trying to get better each and every day, 1% each day, 1% each day.
And it adds up. It ends up adding up. And for you guys, I always find it fascinating when alums go back to prep schools that they played at, because it just means more, right? I mean, you can obviously take any prep job, hypothetically any prep job and do your best and work your hardest. But I always find something different when you're back at your own school where you used to go. You were there 2012 to 2014, which was not that long ago. What does it mean now to be back at Williston as the head guy? Where are you hoping that this program goes, the direction you take?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For me, my dad was an immigrant from Portugal. My mom grew up in the inner city. I'm from Federal Hill in Providence, born and raised in that area. Not a ton of hockey players that come out of that area. And for me, I was really lucky. I got into the game young, ended up winning a raffle at a Boys and Girls Club. They had an initiative to get inner city kids to play hockey. And it was through the Providence Junior Bears youth organization. Won that raffle at 2-3 years old and ended up, getting on the ice and loving it. And honestly, Williston for me was an unbelievable place because from my background, kids from Providence, kids from the inner city, they're not going to boarding schools. They're not doing those things. And to have the opportunity to do that was unbelievable. It was life-changing. I took that opportunity at Williston, as a student athlete. And, at the time at 16, 17 years old, we take things for granted and we really don't understand the full scope of what's happening. Things really kind of came to light for me when I got to college and, I was sitting in class, 21-year-old freshman, 3 years of junior hockey, And I'm sitting down in class as a freshman, and every single thing that I learned at Williston as a student came to light. The study habits, being able to reach out and talk to teachers and do those things, it was massive for me. And when I got to college, prep school had put me in such an unbelievable place to be ready for what was going to happen on the ice, off the ice, in the classroom, outside the classroom. So for me, people ask me that question, and I'm just humbled. I really am humbled by the opportunity to go back there, build this program and continue to do what Coach Cunha has been doing for the last 19 years. I think for me, I'm a very competitive guy. Everything that I do, I do with a purpose. I'm a passionate guy. I love what I do. And honestly, I want to try and take this program to the next level. That is the ultimate goal. We've been on the heels of the Avons and the Cushings and teams like that. And at the end of the day, if you look at our schedule, those are the first 2 games of the year that we play, right? We play those 2 teams first 2 games of the year for a reason, right? That's our measuring stick. That's where we want to be. That's where we want to get. The only way that we're going to be able to do those things is through recruiting. Recruiting the right kind of guys, recruiting guys that want to be there. And with what we have coming in next year and with what we're returning, we have those guys in our room. So we're extremely excited.
So just to go back a bit, you got into hockey through a raffle?
Yeah, through a raffle.
That's incredible. And so was that something like you entered into the raffle as a 2 or 3-year-old? Did your parents enter you into that? How did you because you're 2 or 3, I don't know how much you're really processing it all, but like how did that kind of passion for hockey start?
Yeah. So my dad is from San Miguel, which is the islands right off of Portugal and the Azores. And my dad moved here. And when he moved to Rhode Island, he moved to the Fox Point area of Rhode Island, and there's a boys and girls club in that area. So my dad, as a kid, went to that boys and girls club, played basketball, played soccer. He was an athlete in his own sense. And through that, my dad, became someone that jumped on the board there and helped coach teams later on and stuff like that. And, the Alumni Association at the Boys and Girls Club was running a raffle for free learn to play hockey. And, I won that raffle and I got to do learn to play with GPYHA. And then I want to say like maybe my Mike major year, I was recruited by the Providence Capitals as a Mite major to move over and play some AAA hockey. And, hockey for me was something that, I didn't have toys as a kid. I always had a hockey stick in my hand. I loved the game. And, for me to be able to do this full time is incredible.
That's incredible. That's amazing. And what I wonder, like what I'm always fascinated with is I grew up in a hockey family. And I, in my job now, I'm in hockey all the time. And I look at the landscape and I'm like, oh my God, it's overwhelming. And I can't imagine how much more overwhelming it is for parents who aren't hockey parents, who maybe didn't grow up playing hockey, or in your case, are immigrants and had their sons start playing hockey when they won a raffle. How did you see your parents and how did you see yourself, especially as you transition to the Providence Capitals, which is a really good organization down there and it's a kind of an intense hockey experience as a young kid. How did you deal with that? And how did your parents kind of navigate that?
Yeah. I think at times it was a bit of a double-edged sword. I think that I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder just because of the background that I came from. And that really shed light into the way that I played the game. I really tried to give everything I had all the time. But, talk about double-edged sword. The other side of it is, sometimes crossing that line, a little too much. And that was something for me that, I really struggled with was learning how to tiptoe that line. I think for us as a family, a lot of it was trial and error. It was like, just throwing things at a board and seeing what stuck and what worked and what didn't work for us. I think that the group of kids that I grew up around, we had the same core group growing up, and that group was guys today that are my best friends, guys that I still hang out with, to this day. And a lot of us kind of went through the same stuff, whether it was the tournaments or the training and things like that. And, now I'm in a position where I've done a lot of the stuff, right? It was trial and error. So I saw what worked for me. I saw what didn't work for me. And now I'm able to kind of pass that on to my players and say, hey man, like I tried doing it this way. I think you should try the other way. Or, hey, I did this, I thought it was a waste of money. I think you should invest your money into a power skating coach and do it this way. And really just trying to educate people on all the stuff that's happening, because you're right. It is very overwhelming. There's so much going on. You could literally play in a youth hockey tournament every single weekend of the summer if you wanted to. And at the end of the day, some of those tournaments are great. Some of them, not so much.
Yeah. I was talking about this, someone today, like the amount every weekend there's something in boys, in girls, at every level. There's adult leagues, there's adult tournaments every weekend. Like it never ends. And something you touched on there that I thought was interesting was, your Providence Capitals core kind of stayed together for a long time. And one thing I think kids miss out on a lot today, and there are obviously a lot of kids who don't miss out on this because they stay, but a lot of kids jump from team to team. And I think people see it as grass is greener elsewhere. And sometimes it's warranted to leave and go somewhere else. Like there's legitimate reasons, don't get me wrong, but I see kids moving around a lot prior to their U14 year and then sometimes after. And I always think, like, even if it is greener pastures, you are missing out on strengthening those relationships with guys and girls that you played with for a long time. How do you see that? I mean, obviously there are legit reasons, but sometimes I can't get over that because it's like you're missing out on those relationships.
Yeah, you know what? Like I consider myself to be a little bit of a hockey purist, where I truly believe that there are lessons within the game that help shape you to be the person that you're going to become in the future. And, when we talk about lessons, right, we talk about adversity, right? Life is difficult. Life throws wrenches at you each and every day. And, I believe that there are so many things that I learned through the game, whether in the moment I figured it out where I was like, okay, this is a lesson that I need to just be stronger and grind through this, or it's 10 years, later, and I'm looking back at something that I went through and I'm like, wow, like that really played a massive role in shaping me to be the person that I am today. I think that we're just the society that we're in today. You look at the NCAA with the transfer portal, you look at kind of everything that's happening. I do believe that there is value in putting your head down and grinding through something that just may be a little uncomfortable. When it comes to the transfer portal and stuff like that, like, hey, you know what? I think kids should be able to transfer one time, right? We all make tough decisions, right? These are decisions that kids are making at 17, 18, 19 years old. And having the ability to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe I made the wrong decision and not have to wait out or sit out. Okay, that's fine. I understand that. But when it comes to the youth hockey stuff, I think everybody is just so concerned about, what the next best thing is. And, I think youth hockey, some of the stuff that has changed a little bit is, my youth team growing up, I'm 29 years old. I'm not that far removed from youth hockey, but my youth hockey team growing up, for the most part, we didn't have power play units. We didn't have PK units. Everybody did it. Everybody did it. We were one of the best teams in the country and everybody did it. And I think if you look at youth hockey teams today, they're ran like NHL teams. You got your top six, you got your bottom six, you got your top 4D, you got your bottom 2D. You got these kids PKing, you got these kids on the power play. Like that's just the way it is. And, people are, I think, searching for that. Hey, my kid's not a top six here, but we're going to go here and be a top six. And, at the end of the day, there's only 6 guys that can be in the top 6 at every level. So, I try and preach being like a Swiss Army knife to my guys, where if you can play in the top 6, that's phenomenal, right? But if you can also play in the bottom 6, that's incredible as well, right? So now if you're a top 6 guy and coach wants to move you out of the lineup, instead of moving out of the lineup, maybe you move down to the 3rd group or the 4th group, but you're still in the lineup. You're still able to make a difference, right? Trying to be a Swiss Army knife.
And especially at the youth levels, you're talking about like 10, 11, 12 years old, you're trying to work your way up. And it's not the be all end all. You're 11 or 12. Like I was at Select 15 camp last week. And even those kids that are there are kids who are 15 now who aren't there, who are going to be there when they're 17. And there are kids who are 15 there now who won't be there when they're 17. And I agree with you. I think, you hit the nail on the head with, like, when I do hear of youth teams with power play units and PK units, obviously maybe it helps you win some more games, but you're also pigeonholing kids in roles that they shouldn't be pigeonholed in when they're 12 years old. And that sort of annoys me. And like, I get that you're trying to win, but also, I worry about this with the national development program too, where I'm like, kid gets stuck, he's a top end kid in a birth year and he's stuck as like a fourth line center for 2 years at 17 and 18. That can sort of put them in that role for the rest of their career in college and then after. At the youth level, that's incredible that's, I can never get over that too.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's something where you look at it and I think that hockey just in general is, a lot of people when you talk to a young kid, hey man, how you doing? What team do you play for? The first thing they say is, well, my team was 12th on my hockey rankings. And it's like, I didn't ask what you were ranked. Like, I just wanted to know like how your team's doing. How are you doing? And I think that a lot of people are extremely consumed by, maybe where their kid's team is at in the rankings and the standings and stuff like that. And you know what, at the end of the day, I tell people the same thing every single time. And it's when I was recruited by colleges, when I was recruited by prep schools, nobody ever asked me what youth hockey tournaments I played in. No one ever asked me, hey, did you play in the Brick? Hey, did you play in the Q? Those questions were never had with coaches. It's about what is your development? Where are you at? Where are you at that moment? Right? Can you think the game? Are you cerebral? Are you heading on an upward trajectory? Right? Like those are the things that are extremely important.
100%. And I think the other thing is like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm poo-pooing on those tournaments or things like that. Cause at that age, that's the biggest thing. I mean, I understand
100%.
It's huge. Like I like fully go all in, but you're 100% right in understanding that when you're recruited to preps or colleges or junior teams, they will not ask those questions. Doesn't mean they're not important. They're big moments in your life. If you're in the Brick, you remember it, when you're older. There's the old clips of the NHL players in the Brick. Like that's fun and that's all fun, but it isn't it's not indicative of, oh my God, I should be a Division I player because I was in the Brick. Like that absolutely isn't it. And I completely agree with you, Brandon, on that. So it's interesting. You mentioned sort of your upbringing as an inner city kid playing hockey. How did that transform your on ice identity and how did that influence you off the ice as well?
Yeah, I think that, I'm 5'8", 5'9" on a good day. I've blown both my shoulders out, multiple concussions, broken bones, things like that. And, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was the way that I had to play. It was kind of something that was instilled in me at a young age. My dad is an extremely, extremely, extremely hardworking guy. He's worked in a factory for years. He's worked in that same factory for 20 plus years. And I look at, the work that he does, and I think to myself, I would not last 2 days doing what he does. So if I can go on the ice and be gritty as F1 on the forecheck and get a bump, then that's nothing compared to, anything that he goes through on in a single day. So that was something that, I really tried to wear on my sleeve was that grit, that mentality of like, hey, doesn't matter how big I am, doesn't matter how big you are, like I'm going to come out with the puck and I'm going to take pride in that. I think for a long time, I, as a youth player, had soft skill where, I had good hands and I was shifty and all that stuff. And then I got to a point where that stuff stopped working. And that point for me was in junior. When I got to junior, I was a good prep school player. And then I got to junior and all of a sudden it was a 17-year-old playing against 20-year-olds and the toe drags of the blue line and the turnovers, in the defensive zone and in the neutral zone. Like if you don't start to adapt and change, then you're just going to get passed by. And I think for me, I was a little hard-headed at times. And it didn't really take until college to start learning how to actually play the game the right way, right? How to be, how to be someone with the puck that's going to make a positive play. And, that was something for me that, growing up the way that I grew up, I thought that the world owed me something. I always thought that I was owed something. And at the end of the day, like we're so lucky to have the opportunity to be able to play this game, and have the opportunity to get on the ice each and every day. Like, that's something that I look back at today, and I definitely took those things for granted. And now kind of in the role that I'm in, I want to teach my players that, hey, you know what, every time you step on the ice can be the last time. So, everything you have, needs to be given consistently each and every day.
And you did 3 years in the USPHL Premier after Williston in the mid 2000s. And I'm curious, like, how did you land on going to the USPHL Premier? And what did you know about junior hockey then? What was the landscape like then that's very different from now?
Yeah, I think that, back at that time, the North American League had not expanded to the East Coast yet. The USHL was the USHL still, but the USHL was a lot of Midwest guys that would have success. A lot of the East Coast guys at that time would go out there, play out there for, a year, 2 years, maybe a little less than that, and then end up coming back to, what was formerly the EJ. I think that, when I look at my time in junior, I was actually going through this a couple of weeks ago. We had like 14 or 15 Division I commits my first year. We had guys like Michael Kim that went on to be the captain at Boston College. We had guys that, played at BC, BU, Northeastern, Dartmouth, Harvard. And the hockey was phenomenal. The hockey was great. When I was going through the prep school process, I was actually drafted in the queue, and I was drafted by Moncton. And I wasn't at the time, I was not a phenomenal student. I just was so just blinders on hockey. And school just, kind of sat on the back burner. And the queue at that time seemed to be a good option for me. Unfortunately, after my last year of prep, I blew my shoulder out, had shoulder surgery, was out 8 months. And what Pete Masters and Chris Masters and those guys were doing with the Junior Bruins, they had been doing an unbelievable job with placing their players and all that stuff. So ultimately I decided to stay at home, play for the Junior Bruins. And, you go into junior and you're like, hey man, I'm going into this open-minded. And then all of a sudden you leave and you're 21 years old. So, it was something that it was like that time in my life was like in the blink of an eye. It went by so quickly, end up playing 3 years, and I end up meeting some of, guys that I'm still to this day best friends with. But I think that the junior hockey landscape has changed, right? You have teams from the North American League that are now on the East Coast, right? You have, at the time when I was playing, there were prep guys, starting to go out to the BCHL and do that stuff. And that seemed to be like a good option as well. But right now, I think you're seeing a lot of just in general with like the CHL stuff, right? Like I scout for Shawinigan in the queue, and we have kids like the route now today is going to be so different than what it was even a year ago. Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, even like I was looking at your EP and it's like 10 years ago, it's so much different, but also 1 year ago, it's crazy different.
Yeah,
and
it's
I'm wondering,
incredible.
like, how did your junior hockey experience, how do you think your junior hockey experience will influence how you advise kids at Williston now who are looking to junior hockey?
Yeah, I think one of the things right now one of the things that I did was I left as a 17-year-old and I went and played in juniors as a 17-year-old. And at 17 years old, you're just like, all right, whatever, going to go out here. I'm going to play, going to be the same. And then you get out there and there's 20-year-olds. And there's a big difference between a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. And I think, that first year for me, I struggled. Like I really, really struggled. I struggled on the ice, and my struggles on the ice then went off the ice because I wasn't playing well and I was in my head and I was really, really struggling with some stuff. And I was coming off of an injury. And the best thing for me would have been to play prep school hockey that year. That would have been the best thing I possibly could have ever done. And right now, one of the things that I'm trying to work through with my players, and I have guys in my room that are going through this right now, and it's trying to figure out when the right time is, trying to figure out, okay, is the right time now? Is the right time next year? Is the right time the year after? I think for every guy, the answer to that question is different. I think, we have guys on our team that are good players, and, they need 7 months in a weight room before they step foot on the ice against any 20-year-old. Like, that's the biggest difference right there, is you get a defenseman who is 6'2", 165 pounds, but every defenseman that's 6'2" in the USHL is like $190. So, or more, right? So just trying to figure that out and trying to figure out the timing of, you want to put yourself in a position where you're going to play and you're going to flourish. We don't want our guys to move on too quickly, go out there, and it stunts their development. That's the biggest thing for us right now.
It's funny. I always look at whether or not a kid should move on to junior hockey pre-graduation as like, you have to know it. Like, it's got to just be
100%.
Like 100% yes. Like,
yes.
Dexter's Ryan Shadzinski. Yes. Like, that makes sense. Like Brunswick's Joe Salandre. Yes, that makes sense. You start to get to that next tier where you're like, oh, you have to think about it for a second. And I always look like, I'm not a coach. I'm not one of the players. I'm not one of their family members. I don't have skin in the game. But I always look at it like, if it takes a second, if there's that little hesitation, wouldn't be the worst idea to go back to prep. And I think the large majority of kids who I hear of that are leaving early or who are thinking about it, I'm always like, I've never really heard anybody who's like, man, I wish I didn't go back to prep for my senior year. Yeah. And I understand that the landscape's changing. I get it. We cover it all the time. But I look at it from the perspective that you just mentioned, and you have that first-person experience. You went through it where it's like, man, if I just stayed that one last year at prep. And I imagine that dominates a lot of your conversations with your kids.
Oh, 100%. I remember sitting in the locker room, had a text written out to the coach, hey, I made the wrong decision, and I would do anything to come back right now. And I never sent that text. I ended up saying, hey, you know what? Like, I made this bet and I got to live with it. So, that is something that I went through. And that's something that, if I look back at my hockey experience, if there's one thing that I could do differently and change, I would change that. I would have gone back and played one more year. I just wasn't ready. There were guys around me that were making the move, and I felt the pressure, and I was like, I got to do this. I got to do this. I had a good year in prep, and I got to now take that next step. And at the end of the day, like I said, best thing for me would have been go back, play one more year. And, we're going through that with our guys right now. It's everything. It's such a changing landscape. And, one of the things that I talk to my guys about when I have these conversations is, hey, did you dominate? Did you dominate? How many games last year were you the guy? How many games last year if I was a scout in the stands, I would have walked out of there and said, that's the best player on the ice. Right. And a lot of times, like, guys are like, like kind of tiptoeing around it. And for me, when you're ready to make that jump, I need you to be like, yeah, you know what? I was the guy on the ice every night. Like, that was me.
I agree. And I think that's something that definitely is missing. And one other thing, along with junior hockey, that you have to deal with a lot is college. And a lot of kids, obviously, for good reason, want to play in college. And one thing I asked in the coaches poll this year was, do you notice players becoming more realistic with their college hockey dreams and where they want to go? And you went, you did 3 years in the USPHL, you go to Skidmore, did 3 years there. Then you went to Salve after that with Division III. And I'm wondering how you navigate that with players and how you plan to, where, obviously every kid wants to play Division I. It makes sense. But now even with the CHL ruling, there's a bigger pool of kids. And there's not more Division I teams, at least not now. The pool has gotten bigger. How do you approach, maybe being a little bit more realistic and showing kids, hey, Division III or club hockey is awesome?
Yeah, I think that, I think that's a great point. Like, I think that right now, from what I'm seeing, is I am seeing kids start to become a little bit more realistic. Right. And now they're thinking, ooh, what about a NESCAC? What about this? What about that? And, for me, when I was in prep school, be open and honest with you, right? Like, I didn't want to hear anything about Division III. Like, my coach would come up to me and he'd say, hey, Brandon, like, why don't you take a look here? And I just didn't want to hear anything about it. And when I got to junior and my production was not where it needed to be and my play was not where it needed to be, I came to the realization, like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm a Division III player. This is where I'm going to end up and this is where I'm going to go. And for me, I wanted to try and get the best academic school that I could possibly get that hockey could give me, right? Being from the background that I'm from, nobody in my family had ever gone to college. I was a first generation college student. And it was extremely important for me to, at that point, get an education. I knew after 3 years of junior hockey, I knew after 2 labrum shoulder surgeries that the odds of me making a living playing this game was like 0. And the odds of me making a living off of an education was extremely, the odds were extremely higher. So that's when the education piece for me, where I was like, all right, like I need to get this done right now. Like I need to get to school and I need to go to a good school and I need to focus and I need to buckle down on academics. And I did that and it was fantastic. But I'd say this, like, I really believe that if you go watch a very good, high quality Division III game, right? Like for us at Williston, we've got Trinity close to us. We've got Amherst College close to us. If you go watch a Trinity Amherst game, right? Those are good hockey players that are on the ice. Those are good hockey players that are on the ice. And I think if prep kids and younger kids start to go out and watch some of those games, you'll realize like, hey, there are dudes that are on the ice. Like there are guys that are very, very good hockey players that are playing in those games. And I think that with the CHL stuff right now, everything's just going to get pushed down. Everything's going to get pushed down. And those schools, the Trinities, the Amherst, the Skidmores, the Salves of the world are just going to get better and better and better and better. And, I think it's something that, we talk about it at school all the time. Like if you're able to play college hockey at any level, you're lucky. You're extremely, extremely lucky because not everybody gets an opportunity to do it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's interesting because, now obviously with kids coming in and everything and when to leave and when not to, kids come in obviously with the Division I mindset and they want to play that. And then I think over the course of those couple of years of prep school, you sort of start to figure it out. Some don't, and some still want to play Division I. And I completely get it. Like I completely understand it. But the Division III route, I've talked to Division III coaches there, and I remember one I talked to in the winter had said, in January, we never usually have kids committed in January. We have 8 already, where it's like kids are realizing, all right, this is a very viable path. It's really good. And I don't have to kind of overextend myself to try to do Division I hockey. In terms of the players you're bringing in, on the coaches poll, you were mentioned a couple times as, Williston and what they're doing and sort of the players they're bringing in and your background in younger players, especially the 2009 to 2011 birth years. How have you gotten ingrained in that? And how are you approaching the fun aspect of prep hockey, which is recruiting?
Yeah. You know what, for me, like, I've known one thing my whole life and it's grind, and when I first got out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was clueless. And I went back to, at the time it was Providence Hockey Club. Now it's back to the Providence Capitals. And I jumped on there as a skills director, and I jumped on with their 2009 team. I did it that year, made no money and just grinded and sat in the rink every day and just built relationships. From that, myself and my best friend, his name's Jamie Armstrong. Jamie played at BU, and then last year did a graduate year and played at Boston College. Jamie and I both run an organization called the East Coast Kings. That organization, the first team that we started with was 2009's. We built that team, and from that team, we had 11 guys make the NTDP. We had 34 guys drafted in the USHL. We had multiple guys drafted in the OHL, multiple guys drafted in the Q. And with that 2009 team, it really catapulted my ability to build relationships and do the things that I need to do for our prep school to be successful. So with that 2009 age group, this year we had, I believe it was 5 guys make the U16 national camp. And then I had 1 2008 make the U17 national camp. So we'll have in total next year 6 guys that made national camps, which, we're extremely excited about. At the end of the day, that's not going to win games. That's not going to put the puck in the net, right? Like we need to still go out there and play, and I need to do my job and coach. But for what we have, we play a very, very difficult schedule. If you look at our schedule, there are no easy games. Like last year, we played Cushing, Avon, Brunswick, Westy, Loomis, Berkshire twice, Noble, Sebs, Rivers. Like we play all the top dogs, and that's what we want to do. But for me as a coach taking over, I want to play the top dogs, but I want to go in with some top dogs too. I want to go in being able to get into an all out fist fight. I think that over the last couple of years at Williston, we've had good players. We've always had good players. I think for me right now, it's about getting more good players and putting them together. But for us, we've always been an extremely hardworking team. If you come out and watch us play, we'll block 25 shots and we will, we want to be miserable to play against, but we've successfully done that. And that's kept us in games and that's kept us hanging around. I'm not okay with being in games and hanging around. Like I want to win. I want to get into an all out brawl. Like I want our hockey to be like, hey, you know what? I never want to play that team again. That's the type of group that we're trying to create at Williston. And for me, prep school hockey, I think every school recruits differently. I think every school has their own philosophy in terms of the way they do it. For me, I found that if we go after some younger guys that are ready to play, then that's where, we're going to have success within recruiting. So, next year we're going to have 8 2009s and we're going to continue to go after younger players. So 2010s, 2011s, and through the East Coast Kings, like those are all guys that I've been working with for 3-4 years now. So I get the ability to start building relationships. I get the ability to start working with kids really 2 to 3 years before any other prep coach is even seeing them. And that's where the value is for me.
And that East Coast Kings that you guys started, did you start getting involved with that during your college career?
No. So I got involved with that right when I got done with college. So Jamie was building that while he was playing at BU. He literally built it in his college dorm room.
Wow.
Yeah, he built it in his college dorm room.
Good for him. I didn't know about this.
Yeah, incredible, man. Like he's a guy who, he's also a Rhode Island guy, grew up with Jamie. And he's a guy that, if he wants to get something done, he's going to get it done. Like that's just the type of person that he is. He's also someone that absolutely grinds. And he embraces that grind. So that's something that he was still playing when I was done playing. He was in college, sitting in his dorm room at BU, built that organization, and we've kind of taken it from the ground up and ran with it. Before Jamie was running it, the program was ran by Vinny Montalbano, and Vin's a scout with Vancouver. So Vin started that brand, and Jamie and I and all those guys played for it as players growing up. It kind of went away for a little bit, and then we stepped in and we kind of rebranded it, and we're doing it our way, which is awesome.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, Brandon, I'm excited to see what you guys are able to do at Williston this coming winter. For over 20 years, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey has been helping hockey players of all ages develop their individual skills and improve on all aspects of their game. Through structured drills and innovative training equipment, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey's intense on-ice instruction challenges each student to be the best at their ability. Find a hockey clinic or summer camp that is right for you today at nateshockey.com. That's NATES hockey.com. Eric Nate's Euro Hockey, train to be the best.
Do you want to become a better hockey player this summer with Paul Vincent Hockey? Since 1972, Paul Vincent, currently the head skills instructor of the Florida Panthers, has been developing NHL and college hockey players. Paul Vincent stands by his saying, there's always room for player development. Players such as Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, Keith Yandel, Matt Grzelcyk, Patrick Sharp, Adam Oates, and many more have trained with Coach Vincent and his staff and have outstanding results. Join Paul Vincent this summer at one of his 4 Massachusetts locations, Canton, Saugus, Middleton, and Falmouth on Cape Cod. To reserve your spot today, go to pvhockey.com or call 978-807-4070. That's pvhockey.com or call 978-807-4070. Paul Vincent is ready to get back to work this summer. Are you?
But before we go, we have our great producer David Yaz with Overtime.
overtime.
Yes, welcome back to Overtime, where I lob 3 questions the way of both of our panelists here. And since you guys have apparently been hockey fans since you were in the womb, these are going to be questions about what it means to be a hockey fan. So, Brandon, you're the guest. You get to go first. Here's the first question, and it's a tough one. Is it ever permissible to wear a jersey of a team that you don't root for? In other words, you got your team. Is it permissible to wear the jersey of a different team? Your thoughts, Brandon?
I'm gonna go with a no on that one, unless it's a like national team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're from Canada and you're a Vancouver fan and you're wearing a McDavid Canada jersey, I can live with that.
Okay.
But I'm gonna go with no on that one.
Okay. That's good answer and good amendment to the answer. I think that's fair. Evan, your thoughts?
I grew up with it being a definitive no. The only exception, like Brandon, you mentioned a national team, or like if you're a family member, like obviously like that is obvious. But nowadays it's very common. I have a little cousin who's a Bruins fan who like loves Austin Matthews. And I'm like, I don't understand that. When I grew up, like Canadians were the Bruins rival. Anyone could have played. Max Pacioretty was like the first American captain of the Canadiens. I hated him. No thanks. So I don't understand this new thing with like, oh, I'm a Red Sox fan, but Paul Skeens is amazing. I'm going to buy Paul Skeens stuff. So yeah, no, I'm a no.
Yeah, I'm a no on that too. That's just weird. Well, I particularly don't get, well, I mean, I get it, but some kids are just become fans of the sport. And so they have like 3 different jerseys, 3 different players, 3 different teams. And that's to me, it's not as much fun. Anyway,
No, it isn't.
All right. Question number 2. Evan, you can start with this one. Is it, if you root for one team, are you required to hate the team's rival just as much or more as you love the team that you root for? Tell me about that.
Yes, it should be natural. You should hate it. Like I would like I go back to like the most hated team, the team I hate, the New York Yankees.
Yeah.
Hate the Yankees. I hate the Yankees more than I like the Red Sox. Like Billy Beane and Moneyball. I hate losing more than I like to win. Like I hate the Yankees. I hate them. I hate the Red Sox at times too with how they handle things and the route they're going in. But yeah, you should hate your rival. It should be natural to hate it more than you like your own team.
We should provide the caveat that sports hate is different than like actual hate.
Yes, yeah.
But sports hate is important. It's important.
Sometimes I wish bad things, but not all the time.
Brandon, your thoughts? Rooting against a team as much as rooting for a team.
Yeah, I second that. I'm a Bruins fan, and just in my blood, I hate the Canadians. It's just natural. I work with a lot of youth hockey kids, and a lot of times I ask them, hey man, like, what's your favorite team? And they're like, well, I like the Bruins. I like the Canadians. And they're just naming the entire division. And I'm like, I don't think you can do that. I don't think it works that way. So I'm with you on that 100%.
It's also not fun. Why would you no, I want one team, live and die with that team. And I hate the teams that are the rivals with them. I'm with you.
All right. Question number 3, final question for overtime. Brandon will send this your way first. Is it ever permissible to adopt a so-called second team? Yes, you have your team you root for. Yes, you hate the team's rival. But are you also allowed to root for another team, perhaps root for another team after your team has already been eliminated or they happen to stink that year or whatever? How about that, Brandon? You ever root for a second team?
Yeah, I think so. It hurts me to say it because I don't think it's like, I don't think it's something you should do. But at the end of the day, like when you're watching the Stanley Cup playoffs and your team's out of it, you want to have something at stake so you can feel good about it at the end. For me, I think I latch on to players. I think it's like, once the bees are out, I'm looking for guys that I really enjoy watching. And then I can watch those guys kind of throughout their playoff series and whatnot. So yes and no, I think it's more player for me than anything.
Great answer. Evan?
I like
agree
that.
Or disagree?
I like that idea because like I went to UMass, so Cale Makar was there. So it's like, oh my God, anywhere Cale goes, I root for that team. I want him to win, like always. When I was growing up, my cousins live in Southern California, and they sent me a Scott Niedermayer Anaheim Ducks like jersey. It was orange. It popped. It was cool, and it was right during their 2007 Cup run. And that became like my second team growing up was the Anaheim Ducks.
All right,
so
so allowed to have a second team.
They're boring now, but they were big when I was little.
Well, to draw a comparison from another sport, growing up in New England Patriots fan starting in the late 70s, you almost had to adopt. I mean, I was a fan of the sport, and when playoffs rolled around, the Patriots were typically nowhere to be found. So, you had to pick like the Redskins or 49ers or somebody like that. But anyway, terrific job, both of you. And we'll order up some Niedermeyer bobbleheads for you both for your to root for that as well. Back to you, Evan, to wrap things up.
That sounds good, Yaz. But yeah, that's been RinkWise. Brandon, thank you so much for joining. Best of luck to you this year. I'm sure we'll see you around the rinks quite a bit. And that's RinkWise. For New England Hockey Journal, I'm Evan Marinofsky. We will see you at the rinks.